Hello, today is Tuesday, the 25th of February. Feels like we had a week's worth of price action yesterday alone, doesn't it? A really nasty sell-off, and kind of feel I kind of feel a little bit grateful that I wasn't feeling a bit better because pretty painful day. The key level, as I said, I was watching to see if that 50% retrace level in Solana would hold, or if it would keep going and turn into a bigger reversal, and it didn't. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But let's start with Bitcoin today and where we are, big picture. Because if I'm going to start with, this is a weekly chart of Bitcoin, and for me, whenever I'm looking at these retraces and these sideways retraces, I look at these moving averages, particularly this weekly 20 and the daily 20 moving average, and I look at support and resistance levels, but I really, when I'm not sure, rely on Fibonacci retraces. So if I think we've done a big 5-wave rally from the low that we made in 2022, I'm going to put my Fib retrace levels on from here, and you can see that where we tagged the low yesterday was the big 236 Fib retrace from this low in November 2022. And for me, that's pretty important trend support. If I go back to previous moves, and I want to know if it's going to keep going higher or not. For example, here, you can see that we pulled back to this 236 Fib, didn't close underneath it, kept going higher. For me, it's like a trend support and resistance. So for me, sitting here, this is a level where we could see a decent bounce. Potentially, we could have done one of those flat corrections. What do I mean by that? Well, normally in a bullish market, you'll see a 3-wave correction like this, and you keep going like this. Sometimes they look more sideways. You'll see 3 waves, and you go sideways like that. And sometimes you make weird ones where you make a slightly higher high and a slightly lower low, and you keep going. And so it is quite possible that we've done a flat correction like this here. But it's also possible that we've done 5 waves up and we started our correction here with 3 waves. And if that's the case, let's take a little peek under the hood and see if this 236 Fib level lines up with a pretty nice equal measured move. What I mean by that, ideally I would like to see this swing being 61A of this first swing or equal. So if I measure it like this, you can see we're in a situation where, yes, we went 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I kind of don't like this because it doesn't look like 3 waves or finished. But it is a pretty interesting level to bounce from. And when I do the same kind of exercise with Microstrategy, I also think that we are at a pretty interesting level to bounce from. But what happens here if we keep going, if we keep dropping underneath this 87,000 level here in Bitcoin? Let's hope my voice keeps going and we don't lose it. Well, I'm going to go back to the beginning of this whole swing in Bitcoin, because what's been very interesting here is every pullback that we've done. Let's tidy up this. Let's take everything off except this 50%. So you can see that from the lows, the first 5-wave swing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pull back 50%, keep going. Here's our next swing. It's from this, so this was our low, 50%, 50%, kept going. And so if we keep moving this up, then, so we go from this low to this high here. So we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 waves back to the 50%. So every single swing that we have made from this November 2022 low, we have pulled back 50% if we're going to keep going. So let's take a look at this. And here we did a very nice 3-wave pullback. And so we can say if we lose 87,000 in Bitcoin and we are still going to stay in that that move higher, pulling back 50% and continuing. If we lose 87,000 and we continue selling today, the next support comes in at 79,285. I would be surprised if we went down there in a one. And what do I mean by that? I mean that normally big 50% retraces, you can see it here, are usually with very nice three-wave corrections. Every other one was very nice three waves. So what would be more likely here would be a big drop, a bounce, and then a third wave down, and then that would be where we would be looking for Bitcoin to hopefully make a little bit of a bottom. So 87,000, again, this is not one of those levels, and we certainly don't have the price action to do it. This is not one of those levels where you go all in looking for new highs, but this is also not one of those levels where you want to short. I think that we are definitely down here in this in the zone where really basically since November the dips have been bought. And as we get to the end of the week, remember, for most of crypto, the deribit options on the last Friday of the month, which is this Friday, are quite a big deal. And if we break, they normally try and keep it in a range. And I'm going to talk about options in a minute in relation to Solana, because I think that was a big part of the move yesterday. But I do think that there's quite a good chance that we see the dips being bought here, and we see what kind of a bounce we're going to get, okay? So if we draw our fibs from this low to high, I would also say that this is a 38.2 retrace level. And because fibs are it's a little bit lower, 86.381. So if we have a little bit dip of a lower and we hold 83.6.381 on a close, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bounce like this. And where might we bounce back to? The middle of this range and 95 would be my first target, if we get a bounce. Again, I don't think this is the moonshot to new highs, but it's certainly a level that I'm going to be watching. Okay, the next one I'm going to look at is Microstrategy, because it is related. Now, Microstrategy, of course, their options expired last week. But if we look big picture where we are in this one, we are in a kind of one of those scenarios. I'm going to go down to the daily because you can see the swings a little bit better. It's possible that we've done 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3 up, and potentially 3 down here. And if we measure from this high to this low, project it from here, haven't quite reached that equal measured move yet, have we? The first support then comes in here at 244. That's where this swing would be 61.8 of this first swing. And that's pretty close to this daily 200 moving average as well. So we are underneath these lows. We're a little bit lower in the pre-market. So I'm going to be looking for this 244 and this 200 moving average to be support for MicroStrategy. Not quite there yet, but just sometimes it's possible, because we're at this previous low and we've just filled this gap. We could see a little bit of a relief bounce here before we see one more final push lower in MicroStrategy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that today. But in terms of buying for the longer term, no, we're not quite there yet. I'd really like to get this week and this month out of the way. One thing about, especially a really big, busy options market, which Deribit is, all of these, for every option buyer, there's a seller, and that's a market maker, and they hedge they hedge the options that they sell. And if price moves out of where they've hedged, quite often they have to move. And if, for example, if it moves drastically lower, you bought puts and they're effectively long, they have to sell it too. So you can see quite, as you get closer to options expiration, you can see quite expanded moves. Or volatile moves. So let's talk about Solana, because yesterday we were looking at this 50% retrace, very similar to that we were just talking about in Bitcoin. So if we go all the way out here and we look all the way from this low to this high, this 150 price zone yesterday was where I was looking for Solana to find some support. It didn't hold at 150, and I think there's a good chance that we continue lower to 117 from here. Now, we've got the big Solana token unlock next week, right? Which is from the FTX era, $2 billion in Solana tokens unlocked. And there has been a lot of trading around this unlock that I didn't realize. For example, as I was doing some research at Deribit, 25% of the options traded last week at Deribit were on Solana, and most of them were puts, and they were block trades. And And a block trade is not when you go on the exchange and everyone can see, you know, your active trading. These are large privately negotiated option blocks transacted between two parties privately, and they show on the exchange, but you know they're not there. So they're big block trades basically, and there was a lot of big block trades going on last week, in the last week, in Solana. And again, somebody had to sell. There's two parties to the trade. Somebody was on the other side of them. The other thing that I read in the news ender yesterday was how much trading Wintermute was doing yesterday. Now, Wintermute is a big leading market maker. Again, everybody wants crypto to go institutional, but when you do your trading against big boys like Wintermute, and Wintermute is a very big player, and they were doing massive transfers of Solana yesterday. I can't remember what I read. I think they were like 20. They withdrew 20 million Solana in tranches from Binance, and they were moving them around different exchanges. So clearly, there's some very big trading going on around this expiration. And for me, I do think, you know, whenever you get something as oversold as this, there is a risk of a bear market bounce, and we are in bear market territory down. We're down more than 50%. But this 150 level that we yesterday thought might be support now becomes resistance. And I think that the most likely path, particularly because we validated these other fib levels in Solana, this 150 zone becomes resistance potentially, and we are more likely to go to 118. Now here, I think there's a very good chance of bounce. I wouldn't be surprised if we did this here, and we could then talk about which way next in Solana. But clearly, there are very big moves going on that we don't quite have all of the details of. So we need to be a little bit careful. Okay, let's take a look at... so again, I wouldn't be surprised if we bounce, but for me, the path of least resistance after we lost 150 yesterday in Solana is 150, and only if we get above and hold above 150 do I see the chance of perhaps this pain being over. Otherwise, I think that we could bounce, but unfortunately most likely continue lower to 180, and these a really good support and resistance zone. We go all the way back to 2021 here at 118 in Solana, so further to fall. Okay, let's take a look at ETH, which is the other one that's had a lot of interest. And I have to say, some stuff, not everything, looks terrible yesterday. One of them is ETH. Here we are sideways at this weekly 200 moving average again. And you can see that all the way back to 2022, we have been, sometimes we get underneath it, we stay close to it, get back above it. Get underneath it, stay close to it, get back above it. We've been kind of dancing with this 200 moving average, which is in an upslope. And here we are again. We might close underneath this weekly 200 moving average this week. And if we do, I would expect this trend line support and the low. Again, we had this, remember, we had this really big bounce from this low at the beginning of this month. I wouldn't be surprised if we retest it or see a higher low. And again, remember, most moves are three waves. I'm still looking for that second bounce higher from here. So it's still a little bit choppy. It's not the next swing higher that I've been looking for yet. But although this had a pretty ugly day, again, this is another one as we head into month end where I would not be surprised if we see a bounce from here. If we look lower time frame under the hood, let's get rid of this. On this daily chart. So here's our first big swing, this really bullish pin candle. You know, really we've been trading in this range since 3rd of February, haven't we? The entire month we've been trading inside the range of this one daily candle. But if we look at this as a big bounce, 3-wave correction, here's our first swing lower, here's our second one. We've gone more than the equal measured move, which is what I was hoping. Hoping this would end up being a sideways range. But if we look at this in terms of fib retraces, just from this low to high on this bounce, then I wouldn't be surprised if we don't go too much lower. Maybe 2,200 and 2,200. I am expecting a bounce here, and possibly because first swing, 3 waves back, another swing. I wouldn't be surprised if we retest the highs of this little sideways range. So if you're feeling the pain, usually the moment where you give up and you don't want to hold it and you want to sell the lows is usually when the market tries to bounce. So watch out for that. And if you do get it and you still want out, then, you know, and we do that, then getting back into the middle range, get out there at a better price if you can, if you're trading this. So again, I do think we're kind of where we are here. I think we're at a place where we are in a buy the dip zone. We might have to wait for another day or two. Again, one of the turning points I thought might happen this week would be the Nvidia earnings, which are after the close tomorrow. But really, otherwise, the market's really only really watching what Trump does, isn't it? Okay, next one I am going to look at is Litecoin and Ethereum. Now, this is still one of those charts where I kind of really like. As you know, I was... no, that's Lido, not this one. That didn't work. Yeah, didn't trigger. If I look at this on the weekly and I look at these lovely weekly moving averages and how we are holding above them, sideways consolidating in Litecoin, this one is not the end of the world for me. For me, when I look at this, it looks to me like we made a big 3-wave correction, and potentially this is wave 1 of a new upswing. So I look at this on the daily. By that I mean this is 1, 2, 3, and here's our new upswing, which we could argue was 5 waves. So this is wave 1, and we're looking for 3 waves back, maybe 50%, maybe 61.8. Maybe we do a really deep retrace. You can do that in wave 1. We could come all the way down here, couldn't we, to the daily 200 moving average. But I still think that Litecoin is one of the better looking charts with more upside potential at the moment. So when I'm not sure, I put my fib retrace levels on. So if we do that here from high to low, see if the 236 fib got validated. It did. And here we are at this 50%. Pretty cool. Holding it at the moment. Now we could keep going lower. If we keep going lower, the next one obviously will come down to the 61.8 and so on. But for me, I see fibs like a little bit of a ladder. So if we were to bounce from this 61.8 here on the daily, or back above 117 in Litecoin, for me, and particularly back above this daily 50 moving average, that would be quite a bullish trigger for me. So I'm not saying buy it here because it's going to happen. I'm saying if we get above that, yeah, that's a pretty good shot that potentially we've done that next, and next swing higher is underway. So 117.30 is the level I'm looking at. I might even put an alarm on here. If I put an alert on it, then I get an alert on my phone so I can not miss it. So that's what I'm looking for in Litecoin. Otherwise, really, we're still, unfortunately, in this choppy sideways range. What about Ripple? Ripple fell back with pretty much everything else yesterday. Let's take a look at where we are. Still in the sideways range in this one. I know some people are going to be freaking out, going, oh, this is a head and shoulders pattern. Okay, here's the thing with head and shoulders patterns. They don't always work in that they don't always make their target. So if we were to say this is a head and shoulders pattern here on the daily in Ripple, we would say here's our first swing to the neckline, bounce. And so if we break down, right, the way your target is, we measure from there to the neckline. That's going to be the neckline because it's horizontal there, and that would be our target all the way down here. Now, if they fail, if your head and shoulders pattern doesn't work, it's because it's an ABC correction. So we measure this first swing, and this time we're not going to stop at the neckline, we're going to go lows to highs. So we measure from this high to this low. Here's our 3-wave rally, and we project it from here. And we say then, if this is going to be a false breakdown of this head and shoulders pattern, excuse me, the support is at 182, and worst case scenario, we do a big equal measure move back to 1.2 in Ripple. Now, a bit like Solana, we're sideways at the previous highs. So not everyone's going to be riding this bus. Some people have taken some profit out, I hope. You know, double tops and double bottoms are very strong signals. But that's what I'm looking for, and potentially, you know, we've done 5 waves up, and here's a big swing, and again, we could be seeing a big 50% retrace of this swing. That's where we found support before, this 50% level. I wouldn't be surprised to see this retested again. If we lose 184, 146 would be the 61.8 next. But for me, I still kind of like this one. It's a really strong uptrend. For now, it's just a correction and an uptrend. No different to Bitcoin or a lot of the other really strong charts. There's a few charts that outperform. I'm always interested in the charts that are outperforming. So that's why I keep buying Little Burt and some of the others. One of the ones that really outperformed yesterday and certainly didn't fall as much as the others was BNB. And so if I go to the weekly chart in BNB, so unlike Ripple that we just looked at, we've kind of pushed beyond the previous highs from 2021 in BNB. And if I go all the way back to the start here, 2017, we're holding this 236 fib, which is very interesting. In fact, when we sold off yesterday in BNB, this is where we pulled back to. Not only is it a big then 236 fib from the all-time lows, it's also the weekly 50 moving average, which is really strong support in this coin. If we look back, it's been really strong support and resistance previously. And so for me, this is quite an interesting level that we held from. So if we are likely to see a bounce and some stuff today that's tradable, I wouldn't surprise me if it is Binance coin. And if I look under the hood, if we go down to the daily here, this kind of looks quite constructive. From the highs in December, this looks like a big 3-wave correction potentially. This rally that we made from the beginning of the month low, we've pulled back and corrected it in 3 waves. Is it an equal measured move or a little bit longer than that? Let's have a look. It's not quite the equal measured move. We could fall a little bit further, couldn't we, to 577 today, and then back above all, still holding this 236 fib level at the end of the week. For me, it's quite an interesting look here for BNB. Remember, the weekly moving averages, it's the weekly close that matters. We could have a look at it a little bit, look under it today. So this is another one on my watch list to watch for lower time frame bullish reversal price action. You know, maybe a double bottom or a really good higher low, or some flipping some lower time frame moving averages to move higher. So BNB, I think, potentially is setting up pretty nicely. Another one outperforming, and I know there are so many, but there's a little 50% rule that I like to use, and this is Bittensor or Tau. And obviously we've been in a really big, since April a year ago, we've been in this sideways consolidation, and I'm applying that 50% rule here. So for me, I was kind of quite excited. From this low here was 5 waves, and it looks like big 3 waves back. But this rally, so from this high to this low, stalled at the 50%. And when you stall at a 50%, you kind of look for it to pull back 50%. So from this high to low, we got to 50%. So now here, if we go the other way, I'm looking for this 50% back from this low to hold, which is exactly where we are sitting. If you can see where we are, as we head into the open in Bittensor, 366 then is this 50% support level. It was a pretty good support and resistance level as well. I also think potentially we've done 3 waves back. So I'm watching this pretty closely today when, you know, we've only just got here. But again, this is one of those 50%, 50%, 50% levels. So I'm looking to see if we can bounce from here. And so my first target, if we do, so I'm going to put my Heikenhashi on and see if we can go green and see a really nice strong rally here today in Bittensor, or if we're going to break the pattern. If we break the pattern instead, right? So here we are at 366. And the first target is going to be 50% from this high to low, because we're doing that 50% coiling up thing, which is at 425, and then we'll see what happens. We might keep doing that 50% thing. We might get up here and pull back 50%, and then rally 50%, and we keep doing it until it breaks. But Tau, I think, is looking pretty good for one of those 50% moves. So that's what I'm looking at today. So yeah, that's where we are. It's been a very difficult week. If you are, excuse me, if you've had a really bad day, please be careful revenge trading. Don't try and make it all back in one trade. Be very careful easing back in, and let's watch closely for proper decent tradable reversals and keep your expectations low. Bear market rallies, if this is a bear market and the high is in, and this isn't going to be, you know, like a trend bounce, bear market rallies can be really fierce. They can make you think that everything's fine and we're going up again, and it's just not. So, and also there are a lot of big boys trading against us this week, so just be careful with your risk, and speak soon. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to